Hello, welcome to my channel. I'm Tiffany, a retired librarian turned homeschool mom. And in this video, we're going to look at something interesting. So this is a documentary done by PBS called Broadway Musicals, A Jewish Legacy. So this is really interesting. And I learned a lot from this. Cat problems. Back to this. So essentially, what I learned from this, which is very interesting, that pretty much Broadway was created by Jews. Yeah, they were created. Essentially, it was created by Jews. They started off in Yiddish theater. It ended up on Broadway, and the vast majority of songwriters and basically those who produced these Broadway musicals were Jews. Pretty much all, except for one who then proceeded to not be able to be any good until he started writing like he was Jewish. So it's very, very interesting. As they talk about how it was a place they could go. A lot of the stories they told were those of outcasts and people who were different, which resonated with them because a lot of them were immigrants coming from various different, a lot of times Russian and German Jewish communities. So why they did not tell strictly Jewish tales, at least not in the beginning, they told tales of people overcoming things. They also wanted to be, and this was specifically true of those really coming in the the early 1900s, the late 1800s, the people who really came through Ellis Island here. They wanted to assimilate. They wanted to become Americans. This was a big, big deal to them. So that's what it was when they came to Broadway. This was a way for them to show the America they wanted to see, because obviously there's a lot of anti-Semitism in the United States. There's a lot of racism going on, but in the Broadway theaters, similar to, say, the LGBT community, you don't see as much of that because most of them are. They're LGBTQ or they're Jewish. And that's just, it's where they gravitated to because it was a place where they could be themselves. It was a place of misfits to an extent. And so most of the greats were Jewish. So you may not know because they changed their names because they had to sound less Jewish to appeal to wider audiences. And so you have anything, a lot of them, of course, I'm not, Broadway musical is not my expertise, though I enjoy them. Rodgers and Hammerstein I am aware of. I've reviewed his Cinderella, two of his versions. I'm going to throw in another one possibly before I do this. I actually got the Julie Andrews version, which is the original version that they played on television. So the Cinderella was Rodgers and Hammerstein, who did Broadway musicals. They did it for television. So, but they were known for a lot, and for some reason, they're one of them is thinking out of my head. But that's, I mean, then that's what they're known for. I mean, and then they worked with each other for lyricists and music and doing things that were interesting. And then it took a while, but eventually, after World War II, they were able to tell Jewish stories. So you get something like Fiddler on the Roof, which resonates with people because they did find a director. He kept bugging them. It's like, what is this about? Finally, they realized it's about tradition. And that's what how Fiddler on the Roof, though, is in very much a Jewish story. It resonates with people all over the world because it's about two generations. It's about the original tradition and people growing up and the younger generations and the holding on to these traditions and this is what you want to be, need to be kind of thing, which is very, very interesting. It touches on Streisand and how she came into it. It also touches on some interesting stories about cabaret, which I did not know. It did not actually do well on Broadway. But when they redid it for film years later, they finally got it. It's the audiences finally got the Jewishness, but how they were portraying World War II. But then it took even longer for, you have Mel Brooks, who brought to the stage the musical of brain not working, The Producers, where you have Springtime for Hitler, where, as Mel Brooks puts it, the best way to destroy Hitler is to make him look like a fool, which, yeah, The Producers does very, very good at making Hitler look like a complete fool. So you finally have these Jewish stories that are able to be presented. And yes, Mel Brooks, though he's known for things that I may or may not cover on this channel, because Mel Brooks has some interesting comedy. Most certainly not meant for small children. Someone should probably have explained that to my parents. I watched Spaceballs as a small child. Considering the amount of swearing in Spaceballs. I may one day cover Spaceballs and possibly Blazing Saddles. And Robin Hood Men in Tights. So, because they're funny. And there's some humor in there. And they're all musicals. Well, no, not Spaceballs. Or Blazing Saddles. There's a lot of music in Robin Hood Men in Tights. So, but moving on. But it's a very interesting, about an hour long. How long is this? I wasn't paying attention. I was resting after painting my child's bathroom when I watched this today. Don't do that. Small bathrooms are not fun to paint. And yes, if you noticed, if there's white stuff in my hair, no, my hair is not going gray quite yet. Though both my husband and my daughter seem to be trying. Bigger on the husband part. It's paint. And it's not even white paint. It's like a bluish paint. Because I'm crazy. But moving on, this is really, really interesting. And there's a lot of information there about different producers and how songwriters and how they came together. And it talks about them meeting up at different camps and things. And some of them were upper class, some of them were kind of the lower class, but them trying to translate their experiences onto the wider stage to bring it to a Gentile audience, as they would call it. So it's a really, really interesting. Obviously, you see Barbra Streisand on here. She's talked about a little bit, not much. Here, it's just they bring her up, not for even Fiddler on the Roof. I can't remember what it was that she was brought on for, but they found her in a, strangely enough, I believe in a cabaret, singing when they were looking for somebody to sing this specific part. But it is very, very interesting. You have a lot of people who are either the singers themselves, or you have descendants of them who are talking about the theater. So that's really it for this review. It's really, really interesting. I highly recommend it if you were looking at Jewish culture, if you're looking at musical theater history. This is kind of vital to look at because, or specifically even I would say the Ellis Island immigrant community, because of course I've done or going to do at least one video on Angel Island, which is the West Coast thing, and I'm going to probably do more coming in 2024 because that's a whole different experience. This is the experience I'm familiar with, the Ellis Island experience, because that's where my ancestors came from, at least some of them. Father's side, they came through Ellis Island. The other ones came through the Mayflower, possibly. Yeah, my mother's side of the family has been here for a very, very, very long time. So, father's side, not so much. But that's the end of this video. If you like what you see, be sure to check, like, and subscribe. I'm covering, I think this is, what is this? It's either musicals or Jews. I'm not sure which. I think this is coming up looking at, yeah, this is looking at the Jewish community. I am covering musicals. Be warned. I'm going to be covering The Sound of Music. Trying to think of what else I'm covering besides The Sound of Mary Poppins, and a few others that I actually haven't seen and do not own. So, Mary Poppins and The Sound of Music, I do in fact own, I think, are around here somewhere. So they will be those are coming up. I've covered the Princess Diaries this year. I've covered Jewish legacy stuff before. This is not the first month I've done this. I think I've covered it at least once or twice. So I also cover African American History Month, though I don't know if I did it this year. I may have. I may have done something else. Just because sometimes I run out of particularly film material. I am doing Caribbean American History Month this year, though, which has film issues. It's hard to find films. Books are plentiful. It's trying to find the film stuff, which is, again, why we end up with a documentary here. So, series-wise, I'm doing tons of series this year. I've covered The Princess Diaries. I've covered Tamora Pierce's both The Song of the Lioness and the Immortals Quartet. I'm covering The Guardians of Ga'Hoole right now. That's going to be followed by another Meg Cabot series, and then going back to Catherine Lasky. So those are the series that are coming up. I'm covering LGBTQ. I'm covering vaccines this year. I always cover spring stuff in March, so you can go back and look at those videos. And Irish stuff, just personal interest. So that is it for this review. If you like, again, like and subscribe. Leave a positive comment if you have one. Thank you.